Hey, everyone. It's Isaya. Welcome. So, this is Things Women Don't Talk About, a new episode on the podcast series about things women don't talk about. And today, my guest is Nikki Cornfield. Before I go into introducing her, I'm going to remind you what the series is all about. So, it's a series that I've been doing for over a year now, and I have a guest. and we discuss around topics that are seldom discussed, whether they are too difficult or not serious enough to be broadcasted, whether they are too mundane or too sacred, whether they are too dark or too light, too taboo or too fun. Because, we don't talk about fun stuff on the internet. We have professionals. Well, not here. So today my guest is Nikki Cornfield, and I'm going to read her. It's and I had to shorten it because she's done so many things in her life. So Nikki worked for an airline, and then continued with her family to travel and live around the world. It was the rich and diverse experiences of expat life and following her own internal compass that led to the awakening of her own spiritual gifts, but also the wisdom and experience she is now called to share with the world. She is a certified holistic health coach, reflexologist, Reiki practitioner, yoga and meditation teacher, and now passionately developing her spiritual healing gifts. She's passionate about others to find their own soul alignment and tap into natural health and healing. She has recently completed her first solo book, woohoo, a memoir, The Soul Compass, A Traveler's Way Home. I'm excited about books because I'm in the process of writing my own book. So congratulations for finishing yours, Nikki. So hello.
Thank you.
And
Hello. Thank you for the nice introduction.
So the subject that we're talking today about is we titled it, My Husband Thinks It's Weird. And to sum it up, we are going to try and discuss the joys and difficulties of evolving spiritually when you are in a loving relationship. How to be true to oneself when evolving, so basically when changing, how to remain in parallel paths with your partner, how to be more than a trailing spouse, and how to be your own person and still a member of a loving duo. So this is a big one for me. My parents divorced when I was quite young, and it was a shock in my life. And I think it was exactly because of that, because they were not on the same wavelength. That's the only thing I can say. One of them actually changed and the whole thing imploded or exploded. So that's basically why I was so interested to talk about it, because it reminded me of my own childhood trauma. So yeah, I'm really interested to know how you evolved into this path.
Yeah, it depends how far we want to backtrack. We could go back as far as soul connections. How much people resonate with that is a subject on its own. I became aware during writing of the process of the book that a real awareness that him and I had soul contracts in a previous lifetime, and that it was his turn to enable me to have this soul expansion and growth and to follow the rabbit hole in whichever direction I wanted to, while he provided for the family. And yes, that was a big trigger point some years back. And when I started writing the book, it was a huge loss of identity, and I really struggled with that. But the reason I wrote the book was I started to realize that I have to turn this around to gratitude. This person's been in my life and has enabled me to do this growth. But why am I getting so triggered that he's not on the same path or believing the same things or understanding the same language? And it was all about me. And I think it's always, we have to turn the mirror on ourselves and go, if we're getting triggered by the person we're living with, what is it about ourselves that we need to look at? Because unless they're saying I don't want to be with you and I don't believe any of this and I'm off, and they're still with you, they are supporting you in their own way. So it is really about our inner strength and tapping back into that. And it was quite a journey, I have to say. but well worth it for keep tapping into that inner strength and going, I feel this way. This is my perception of the world. And yes, it's different than yours, but it doesn't make his right or mine right or anything, so it really is a self-acceptance thing.
Yeah, and actually living with someone who thinks you're weird, but still loves you in the process,
Yeah, it's more about him thinking I'm weird than me thinking he was weird, because I really do accept where he's at, because I really see that we're all on our own soul's journey.
Obviously.
And we mustn't judge other people for where they are at. And I think there's a lot of spiritual ego stuff going on where people are being like, well, I'm at this point and you're not, and which is crazy, because we are exactly where we need to be at this right time. So I can start to see this he's starting now to go, a curiosity is starting to happen with him. So it's an interesting process. I'm moving into another chapter again here where I go, he's actually interested now and asking questions and starting to go away and Google things like, what is this spiritual awakening? That's been happening since I was a child. Like, I had this knowing as a child that I was going on this big journey. Like, I was looking for something bigger than me way back when I was a child. So I said, it's not just an overnight thing. This is a real slow burn kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
no, I hear you. I remember, being 3 or 4 years old and actually thinking, okay, so I know I can fly. How come I cannot see myself flying? Because I was absolutely convinced, that I was an angel, basically.
Oh, really? Oh.
And it was like, why doesn't it show, in the practical world? But anyway, off topic. So yeah, when would you say that, or for how much time have you been kind of going, showing up as the spiritually evolved or spiritually awakening person that you are?
Actually, longer than I thought, because I had, as a child, this knowing that there was these adventures that I needed to go and do, and I would go and do them, even though they were maybe uncomfortable. And my parents would say, "You would just go and do them anyway." Like, you just had this curiosity to follow something, and they always kind of encouraged it in many ways. So, but it wasn't. I didn't understand the word soul at that point. There was no such word. There was no such word as instincts and all those things, but it was such a very natural process. I went to tarot readers when I was 13, and my mum was very open to that, which suggests that she was also spiritually aware, but again, quite shut down because it wasn't a thing then. I mean, my dad would not have had anything to do with tarot readers yet. Me and mum and I went regularly. So I guess that was an accidental spiritual awakening without realizing I was on it. All that time ago, where I just knew that this thing I felt inside had to be followed like an invisible thread.
And did you follow that all your life, or was there a moment where you kind of shut it down to have a normal life?
No,
you've been a weirdo all the way.
I have, because I there was always this knowing that if I didn't, it would niggle away at me inside. I would perhaps, for example, get into a relationship where this person wanted, slippers by the fire and his dinner every night, and I could see this comfortable life that would be okay, and then I didn't want a bar of it. I was out of there. So there was this this person stopped me from getting to such and such, but I didn't know what it was. I just knew I had to follow it. So that is the inner guidance system that was there. And when I look at my dad was always very grounded. All that matters is sleeping well at night. He was always in the garden, always in the sunshine. So my dad was, obviously, I chose my dad for that reason. He was the one that showed me nature was the connection. And this very grounded person was always the one that would encourage me. When I moved to Australia with my family, he said, I'll push you back on the plane if you try and come back. I mean, this is like my father, who loved me dearly, and I'm going to Australia, the other end of the world. He had this knowledge that I needed to go and do this journey. And that's, again, I'll talk about the soul connections. That became very obvious during the writing of the book, that, oh my goodness, yes, my dad was very instrumental to this encouragement with the soul journey. But again, very subtle, very unconscious process. So yes.
So it's really about the company pass, about following something that is
Definitely.
subtle, that is not like a big, huge neon sign that says, awaken.
No, I mean, I think some people do get that. I think there's some people have, and I hate to say it, an accident, for example, or a really, really big trip up in life that seems overwhelming at the time, but really and then they change their whole path. They come around and go, oh, I have to change direction. I haven't been listening. So that does happen as well. But mine's been very, very subtle, like, okay, this works.
Of course. Yours seems to have been kind of a literally a journey from very young age, and following the subtle pushes of whoever and whatever seemed to go to push you in the right direction, including parents. And when you met your future spouse, was it part of that push, or was it going in the other direction?
It was actually a blind date. So my friend was already going out with his twin brother, and 3 of us were on flying rosters at the time, and my husband was an accountant in this city with no food in the fridge. So we were, kind of pushed together in a way. And it worked. I don't know how, it just was. It was a very quick engagement, and we were married the following year. Then we had 9/11, and Enron went bankrupt, and we had all these major events happen. And then this opportunity in a different country moved us overseas. So that, again, this sort of like feeling of going out and needing to search for something, that path opened up continually, where opportunities to go to the next place happened. So I think that, and that was all predicted with a tarot reader when I was 13, like this big journey of living in different countries and following natural healing modalities. Now, I didn't force that first move to the Netherlands. That happened because we needed a job. So I wonder how, we have a choice, but also there was a very strong compass that was definitely going to take me in that direction. So I find that very interesting to look back on. And how does he fit into that equation? Because it's his job that took us overseas, that enabled this whole soul's compass, this whole journey. So I really believe in soul contracts now. I really think that he came for that reason, and he didn't really realize, because he's always trusted the knowing. I've taken our family on some crazy rides. Logically made no sense, rationally made no sense, often made no sense, and he's very much a spreadsheet kind of guy. Why did he trust these knowings that made no sense? I don't know. This is soul connection. I can't think of any other reason. So although he may think I'm weird, he also trusted the weirdness.
Exactly. This is very interesting,
isn't it?
Another thing that I seem to be hearing in there is, and I believe that too, so I'm interested to dig, is the physical change of location. So the travel or the moving is part of the path in your life, or am I mistaken?
No, 100%. And interesting that him and I went to a palm reader just before I got married. Now, he'd never have done that on his own, and I dragged him into this cafe where this palm reader was, and she said the same thing. There's all these different countries you're living, and you're going on this path of not self-exploration. It was, you're the wisdom seeker, you're looking for answers. And that, and the writing of the book, I just went, oh my goodness me, that's exactly what I've done. It's this been seeking of knowledge and answers, and the messengers coming along, they're following the urges to follow certain things and study them, have all been about.
But even in your vocabulary, I hear a lot of following, a lot of movement, like physical movement. It's and I think that, I believe that there is, for me, I share that. So the idea that self-development or spiritual journey is kind of a pilgrimage.
It is.
And the more I can move and go towards the next phase, basically, and that can be 2 kilometers or 2,000 or 20,000 kilometers away, but if I can move there, something will change, something will appear on my path, literally. And I think that the idea that we have that path are really important. Like the that we use for spiritual development is a lot about walking and about moving. Forget that, and then they get stuck, literally, in both, figurative and real way.
I really do believe that I really do believe that you only know yourself when you remove yourself from your normal, or whichever way you want to phrase it, environment, like people that have known you for a long time, your family that know you, everything has to be removed
Yeah,
for
the
you to
trees
really,
around.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yes,
Even the because we get it becomes a comfort zone basically, and as we
yes,
know,
yeah.
nothing ever happens in our comfort zones.
No,
But
it
look, for
doesn't.
me,
And
sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, because the places that have called me have all been part of this triangle of the synchronistic lines, like Bali, Adelaide. Adelaide tried to get us, my husband and I, twice, and then the second time was where I had this identity crisis and started writing the book. It was like I could not have avoided that place. I was going there no matter what, and that's happened a few times on my path where I've gone, okay, I'm here now, I'm listening. And then all sorts of things have happened that have really been quite profound. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a
but
nomad.
the fascinating thing with your journey is that it's not a solo journey. All these things happen with someone who, at the same time, thinks you're weird. So, but again, the trust that both your souls have that this will work as a partnership is amazing.
Yes,
Congratulations.
yes.
I know you know it's not a deservability thing, but congratulations anyway.
I know, because there's been 3 children through this whole process as well. I mean, we had
Oh,
3 children. Yeah, I moved with a 6-week-old baby to the Netherlands in the middle of winter, to a house that I insisted that he buy, because I wanted my own home again, because I was nesting. I was pregnant when he
mhm.
announced I've taken a job in the Netherlands. And then I had twins the following year. So it was a massive transition for a traveler to be at home with 3 children.
Wow, yeah.
I gave up a flying career. It was huge changes. So yes, we've gone around with 3 children. So then they all think I'm weird as well. So there's been a
Oh,
big,
okay.
mum, you're really weird. The last 5 years in particular, as you know, as a spiritual awakening has become a term, and the whole world's literally talking about fairies and magic and tarot card. You know what it's like,
Do.
especially during COVID. There's been this explosion of terminology that's become mainstream.
Yeah,
And I'm the, well, mum, you're weird.
absolutely.
And I'm like, well, I'm not
I'm
actually, but
I've got 2 children who actually think I'm weird too.
oh, we could start a debate
But
about the
yeah, the
word weird.
trust that it we're mentioning. Yeah, exactly. We were mentioning earlier on the trust partner in you, so in trusting the weirdness, but there's also your
Yes.
trust in him that is going to be shouldering you. Did you say that? Having your back, whatever you went through.
Yes. Yeah, he was always, I mean, I think I wouldn't say a cleaning up rescue process, which did happen a few times. I mean, I think when you're on a spiritual path, you're not so good with money and things like that. You're not so good. I wasn't so good with technology because I hadn't used it. So there was lots of things like that where I was quite lashing out and frustrated and all those things. And he
Hmm.
would just be consistent that, well, you just learn this. I've had to learn it. You have to learn it. And there was none of this like, oh, just make it all gentle for you, go and get someone. No, you need to learn it. And he was always like, if you don't know it, just need to get on with it. So he gave him very much like the practical grounding side that was
Hmm.
often missing with me. And I
That's
look
interesting
back and
because you
go, that
mentioned
was
the grounding
actually,
side. You mentioned the grounding aspect of your father as well. So there is this um,
yes,
continuous presence
yes.
of
It
of
seems,
help, of grounding
yeah,
help in your life. So you and chose the people
yes.
that would help you be grounded.
I did. Yeah, and I don't think people always realize that. And I say, no, unfortunately, and sometimes fortunately, you do choose somebody like your father, whether you
Yeah,
realize you're doing it or not. And he's a perfect example of that on many levels. And I went, well, that was a choice. That was something that I needed. And it did
yeah,
enable me to have the freedom that I've had. And yes, it's had
exactly.
restrictions when you have children. Of course, you have restrictions, but I turned my annoyance with my loss of identity and earning capacity, which was over 5 years ago, to a gratitude to, okay, this guy's helped me to get to this point. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. You know, you are in a very fortunate position. But yes, you need to learn a few things and you need to write this book, basically. And then you'll see the journey. You'll put the pieces together and you'll start to have this complete transformation on the whole story. And that was the end of the trigger points. The grief initially moving overseas with small children was the trigger point, and so it goes on. They call it unresolved grief in an expat journey, and it was very deeply embedded. I needed to heal those and get rid of them, not get rid of them, but look at them and release them so that I could, you know, help other people through the process I've gone through as well. So.
And what, if I may, because expat life is something very definite. I mean, it means you're from somewhere and you don't live there, right? Which is not my case.
Yeah.
I'm this person who is from all over the place. I've got 3 nationalities. I've lived all over. So I'm always an expat or never an expat, if you want. So how do you feel grief or pain for not being in your country or not anymore? How do you with that with
I've gone through many transitions.
Obviously.
We have moved to Perth when our children were quite, but it's a great question because I think people have an image of expat life as being very glamorous and you're here and you're there, but it comes with massive transitions and big goodbyes and a raising of a whole life, and you're facing another one. Inevitably, a career tends to come behind the person who's taking the lead work-wise. So the first time I moved to Perth, I went through a lot of grief because my children were young and I'd left a big tribe of support in the Netherlands that I'd built up over 6 years, and I was quite the... And then my husband wasn't really home very much at night. So I went through 5 years of really, I missed Christmas being cold, and we would go home. I'd always take the kids together on my own on the flight. Crazy stuff. I was juggling nappies and prams and all sorts of stuff. But for me, keeping my roots back in the UK was very, very strong. And I would do whatever I could to go back and see family. So I kept that up for quite a while. But then we moved to Asia. And for me, I was back in my element because I felt like I was in the center of the world, where I had not only so many places to visit that I hadn't seen before. I was also I followed everyone else and went home for the holidays, which is what my British community was doing. So I had the best of both worlds. And then we moved back to Australia and I was back in square one. I was back in the grief, in a bigger way than ever before, because everyone was still going back to the UK and I was watching them, and I was in the depths of winter and they were going back for the summer. So I had actually more layers of grief than ever to try and work the way through, which is why the book started, because I was struggling on every level at that point. So it was a big time for me. And then we moved back to Perth again because of my knowing that we needed to do that. That's another story. I would say actually that I have good days and bad days with it. Some days I go, I need to go back, and then my husband said it'd be a train crash. I get paid in Australian dollars and my job is here, and actually I really like being in Australia. And then I go, but I miss it and I want to go back for the holidays. The conversations carry on like that quite regularly. So I'm obviously still very torn between here and there. Yeah. But I think it's the geographical location of Australia, not the place, because the lifestyle is exceptional. It's definitely the geographical distance that frustrates me. Because I guess if we move back to Singapore, I wouldn't have that, because again, I'd have this I'd be opening up the world again to me. And I'm as a nomad, a global traveler, I actually don't like being down a cul-de-sac at the other end of the world. I like to be in the middle where the action is.
Yeah, I understand that. I get that. Yeah, because I'm from all over the place, but all over the place is all in Europe. So basically, it's kind of, I know that if I want to reconnect with my Greek roots, I go to Greece. It's very easy. I live in France, right? If I want my English roots, I'll go to the UK, and it's really short, and I don't feel like I'm indeed in the cul-de-sac of the freaking world.
I think for me, that's because there's this consistent conversation about it, and I don't change. I have said at some point I want to be back in Europe, because this isn't going away. This feeling like you, I want to be connected and be able to go here, there, and everywhere easily. But I think it's a matter of timing. Like the children are all here now in university, and we had to do that. We wanted to give them a stability in an English-speaking country that lived before, and we've done that. So I feel like a big tick to me, in that we've got ourselves positioned in such a way that they're doing well, and they'll be out of Perth though. they'll all head off. So it's a matter of time.
But
before...
there's another thing that is interesting. I think we should touch on that, is because we're talking about, the title was "My Husband Thinks It's Weird," and so I want to touch on the idea that when a woman goes through a path of spiritual enlightenment, awakening, whatever you want to call it, very, very often, not only is there a partner, but there are kids in there. And we have this kind of duty or desire to, whatever you want to call it, take care of these little beings, and do not impose our weirdness slash craziness upon their lives, and not move them every 2 weeks or so to get them to an ashram because you decided to follow this or that guru, basically. And as you were saying, my kids we wanted the kids to be able to follow to university and blah, blah, blah. And that means that we, as women, we are juggling that on top, kind of, the spiritual awakening happens in between the nappies and the universities and the deal with the partner.
Yes.
And there's so many of us whose choices are not limited to just I'm being called to, say, Peru or whatever, but is it doable? Is it doable with the money? Is it doable with the partner? Is it doable with the kids? And does that present danger or joy, is it an add-on for the kids or not? Basically,
I think
so. A lot of
for
juggling.
me, I think there is, but I think it gets to a point where the work that you need to do, if you need, like I needed to do a lot of healing around the grief and the, unresolved grief from saying goodbyes and moving and career and things like that, had I not addressed those things myself, my daughter wouldn't be the way she is now, because she was also going through that. She was experiencing everything I had gone through as I moved around the world, and we don't put enough emphasis on our children actually pick up everything that we experience and we're doing. So my grief was her grief, and so when the depression and anxiety hit with her, I knew it was my own. I had to keep going on my own path through writing this book and editing it and going through these things myself in order that she would come out the other side. And that's been the case. So now I firmly stay what I'm doing, because I've seen that this impacts the ripple effect it has on my family if I stay in my own alignment and on my own path and don't try and drag them on it. But obviously they're older. I can do that now. I have freedom. But before it was, as you say, like, oh, they need me so much, and yet I want to go and explore this, and I want to go and do that, and I want to say this, and you realize that you've got other people to take into account. You have to, because they're your family. You created them. But now I just follow my weirdness. I'm glad I'm at this stage now.
Isn't it cool? Yeah, I have the same feeling. My sons are now kind of grown up, so they still want me or desire me or need me at some point, but not desire, this is the wrong word, sorry.
I know what you mean.
I said that and I heard it and I thought no. Sorry, let me remind everyone that English is not my first language, it's my third one, so sometimes I get confused, but anyway, my sons are now 21 and 27, and I do feel like there's now more freedom / opening of the world and in my inner world as well, because also I believe that whatever I did, right or wrong, in their education is roughly finished. I can't change anything, so the only way I can still have an impact, if I want to, is by following my own path, instead of forcefully try to correct my mistakes if I did, which I think I did actually. But again, I'm providing work for the therapists of the future. If I was to be a perfect mother, how would these people feed themselves.
Exactly. I mean, we were just making decisions as we were in that moment. I think
Yeah.
if you look back over your shoulder and go, "Oh, I didn't do that very well," but then you go, "Well, that's how you reacted at that time. You can't go back and change it." And all you can do is like lead by example and become a better version of yourself. And then
Yeah.
it does ripple out to them in a very, very subtle way,
Yeah.
or a powerful way, or both. And
Yeah, and then
it's
they'll be my next guests on the podcast saying, we had this mother. She was really weird, but she showed us that we could move around the world and do different things, and she opened up our eyes to some freedom. And then,
yes,
I think
yes.
in something like 30 or 40 years, we'll understand the ramifications. Just like you're saying with your father, I understood very late that he was the grounding part of my childhood.
Yes.
So yeah. And with your partner or spouse, does he now, since you were saying he's becoming curious, and that's how many years after? How many years have you been together?
It's only really recently, I think, that he started to take me seriously, because I've been really, this is my path as a healer, as a writer, helping people. And I think when you've got your own conviction and you're really in alignment, you're not wobbling anymore, then you start to get taken seriously. And so
Yeah.
that's where then the curiosity with him would be, well, oh, I've just Googled what spiritual awakening is. I mean, that was one topic in bed the other night, and I went, okay.
And that's how
You
many
want to?
years? How many years have we been together?
Oh, we've been together 22 years, so that's a very recent
Yeah.
thing.
Cool.
And I go, would you like to come to yoga with me, or you fancy coming to this retreat? And I try and encourage him, and he's going, no, that's your thing. That's not mine.
Yeah.
So this
I have the
doesn't
same.
really, but just obviously in the background, he's silently Googling away and doing his own research. What's this terminology that she keeps talking about, and trying to understand it. But you can't suddenly make them aware.
No, and you can't be teaching them. You can't be their mother. Basically, it's never a good
No,
idea anyway in a partnership. Or their teacher. Let me teach you what spiritual awakening is. I think that this is exactly the dead end
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's a very fine line navigating the staying true to yourself, and not getting into a criticizing / you don't understand me position. Basically, you're an asshole because you don't understand what I need or who I am. Or
that's the challenging part. And I think it's a lot of couples are really in this. I've got friends of my age who are really in this challenging stage where part of them wants to just run off and find the nearest yoga. I mean, I had a friend who went off with a yoga teacher years ago, and now I understand why, because she changed in front of our eyes, and all she was doing was like waking up to some spiritual awareness, and her husband wasn't, and she chose to leave with the yoga teacher. So that's like 15 years ago. But now I get that. I went, oh, that's what happened with that friend. So she chose this is going. There's a fork in the road. I'm taking the other fork, and that was it. Whereas other people are trying to make it connect and trying to make it happen, and it doesn't. Or there's couples that are really growing together. I'm seeing these different things
But
play
again,
out
it's a
now.
very fine line. It's the same with moving physically or changing countries. My father, who is now passed away, was moving a lot, like moving literally. When I was a child, I counted when I was 14, we had moved 18 times. So more than once a year, right? So it was kind of a big thing. My parents were hippies. I grew up in communes. You don't want to know. Anyway, so his thing was, whenever his life was not nice to him, he would move, literally. Like,
oh gosh.
And so that meant that, it's not at all the same type of move that you're talking about, being called somewhere else. He would flee. He would flee here to go somewhere else and drag me and my mom along. But anyway, so I think it's the same with what we're discussing right now. It's, you can leave with a yoga teacher, as long as it's a choice, a fork in the road, and it's not this is not working for me, so let me run in the other direction. Because otherwise, what happens is, for my father, it was very, very obvious. he would find the same issues at the next location.
Of
So if
course.
you just run with a yoga teacher because you've not solved any of your issues here,
Mm,
you just find your issues waiting in the next partnership.
a 100%. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
there's a very fine line. I'm not saying you should not leave with a yoga teacher. I think, or move, or across the world. But I'm saying that there's a very fine line between going somewhere or with someone because you're being called, or
Mm,
fleeing from
mm,
somewhere where you're unhappy. And the
absolutely. Yeah.
fleeing for me is always a mistake,
Yeah.
always, because the shit will find you again. And for
Yeah.
my father,
Yeah.
it was when I grew up, it was slower, but basically it was around 5 years. After 5 years somewhere, he would move again, and he moved all his life like this. And I found that in myself when I was when I when we first arrived here at this location in France. After 5 years, I was restless. I was like, let's move. There's
Imagine.
something
Yeah.
wrong here. And it was like, maybe not. And that's
Yes.
when my path really became interesting. It's when I stuck to here and kind of tried to see why I was fleeing so much, why I wanted to flee, and what was
Mm,
I running away from. And that when it became interesting. And I still moved, but later on at a date where it was a choice. And I think,
yeah.
yeah, it's a very fine line. What you're describing about being called somewhere else is, or with someone else, is very powerful, whereas the other option is disempowering.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I've felt both. Like what you've said, I get to a point where I go, no, it's time to go, and then you realize, no, actually, you need to sit tight. And then we had COVID here, so we couldn't move, and that was when the deep work went with the book, and I realized that would have been an absolute disaster had I, just wanted to flee the cage, which is what I felt at the time because I was going through a lot. Would have been, as you say, it would have been the worst thing in the world. I would have found exactly the same wherever I would have ended up with a family left putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
But I can see, and we never heard from this woman again. Actually, I've got no idea what the outcome was. Isn't that interesting? No one can find her, and no one knows what happened. But yeah. So I agree that you've got to look at, why do I want to flee? What am I trying to run away from? And is it really the right thing? It's very different than a calling to somewhere. It's a different feeling, isn't it? It's like an urgency as opposed to a subtle,
Yeah,
well,
I was
it's calling me, but I'm going to wait for the other pieces to show me, how do I follow this calling?
mhm.
Rather than,
After COVID, I was really adamant. I wanted to travel like a mofo. Really, I wanted to go everywhere and everywhere, and I did for a year and a half. I like 1 month I was here, one next month I was away, and I had no plans for this July and August, and I realized maybe the reason why I have no plans is because, and at first my original plan during COVID was, I'm going to be in a plane, I'm going to already have bought the next ticket,
yeah,
so that I know that I can go. Basically, I'm
yeah,
never, I think after 2 years of being stuck here, and I live in the absolute middle of nowhere, so it was very comfortable, but it was
yeah,
very, very isolated.
yes, I can
And so
imagine.
this year I found that I didn't want to go, actually. I kind of, I had a plan, and I couldn't bring myself to buy the ticket. It was like, yeah, I'll do it next week and next week. And then I thought, maybe you don't want to go, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting, this fine line of, yeah, uh, and I think really what it goes down to is listening to the subtle voice inside and not the
Yes,
big loud voice.
yeah,
And that's basically what spiritual awakening is to me, is learning to listen to the little voice in there, and the little voice that is always right, provided
yeah,
it's not silenced or overpowered by other people's
yeah,
voices. So like your partner, like, you're weird, shut up, basically. Or your kids, the needs of your kids, or your work, or even yourself. This is not rational. Why would you want to go to this retreat in Venezuela or in India? Stay put. you know um,
yes,
and so
yeah,
there are so many loud voices, and indeed I believe our partners are one of the loud voices.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, I ended up in Peru recently on a travel sponsorship in India this year, and they were very much like I wasn't looking for them. They arrived, they felt right, and I realized I was going on these pilgrimages like my dad. I felt my dad's presence very much, and so that's become kind of my path now. It's not, I'm not looking for another physical place to live. I am open to opportunities and experiences that seem to be coming on my path to really keep the alignment about why I'm here and
mhm,
how I'm helping people. And certainly Peru recently was a plant-based medicine retreat using not what ayahuasca, but the Wachuma San Pedro plant. And my husband
mhm,
thought, "Oh, you're going to Peru and you're going to go and get high." And I went, "Now let's stop this conversation now. I'm not going on a holiday. This is not a holiday. This is I'm sharing nature as a healing. I've always talked about nature and healing and plants, and I said these are plants that are really helping people with a lot of issues,
mhm,
that other pharmaceuticals are never going to touch. And I said that aligns with my message in the book. So this is not a holiday. I could hear myself saying it. This is not a holiday. I'm going for this reason. And then he started to really go, wow, she's really serious about this.
mm,
Like, this is not just, this is going to be an uncomfortable, some parts of this trip are going to be uncomfortable. It's a long way to go. She's really serious about what she's doing. And there was a real settling between the two of us that I'm not just running away to something. I'm not looking for
mhm, yeah,
something else, looking for a place. This is just me being me and
mhm,
following signs. And it was I felt this shift in him that he went, oh, thank goodness she's not looking for another country to live in. I don't have
mhm,
to move.
mhm.
I can just settle into what I'm doing, and wherever she goes, well, she's going to come back.
Yeah, and
It
again,
was,
the subtlety of the voice in you, that said, no, I have to affirm that this is not a holiday. I have to make it, louder,
mm,
so that I can hear it and he can hear it too. And then
yeah, yeah. And the
and then it
shifts that happen,
becomes, it shifts everything. Yeah.
it
So
did
it's
shift
about,
everything. The confirmations I got with the medicine were just profound to me, just quite incredible. And I came back with a real piece about who I was and why I'd written the book and why I'd gone the journey and where he'd been and all that. And it was, oh, that was a heck of a ride. That was a 20-year really ride, a roller coaster in so many ways, but I really felt like I'm off the roller coaster and I can just pick and choose what I'm doing without needing to find anything else. It was a real, oh, okay, I'm home. I'm home
that's
in my own
beautiful.
body. And it was a nice feeling. I'm just hoping it stays because it's easy when you get back into real life to get pulled off in different directions again. I'm trying to stay in that energy I felt when I was there.
Yeah, maybe you will need some, what was it with the vaccine? Booster shots sometimes.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're coming to the end of this podcast episode today because we're already been on for 44 minutes. So I wanted to um, ask you this final question. Do you think that being in a partnership has actually helped your path, or has it prevented your path?
Oh, it's helped my path.
Yeah, I just wanted,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted
Because
everyone to hear it. It seemed obvious, but
yeah, it's like having a tree that's I don't mean a dead tree. I mean a tree that's immovable, that's foundations are really deep. And when you've got a person who is on this path where they're very much up in the air in many ways, and really following these invisible lines, I suppose, that if there isn't someone there to catch you at the end and to keep recognizing that you're going through this sort of almost like this whirlwind in many ways, and that but they are really there for you. That I can't actually imagine not having had that. I
yeah.
don't know where I would have been. I think I'll probably be sitting next to a roadside with a sign or something. I don't know. I actually don't know how that would have looked, but I was certainly not attached to finances and things like that. That was not on my radar. As long as I had enough money in the bank to pay the next plane ticket when I was crew, and I did have my own car and flat and stuff, but I was literally on a roll each month just managing. It was like, it was so not my level of what was important, but you can only go so long like that, where you go, well, that's a bit, it's a bit, we need to take a bit more responsibilities. And I think that he allowed me that, because I never had to worry about that side of life. I was very
Yeah, that for me, that brings me a lot around, and this is a whole different conversation, but about the idea that partnerships or couples it doesn't mean that the two people should be similar. It's about interdependence.
yeah,
It's about supporting each other, whoever they are. But
yeah,
it's not about having similar goals or having the exact carbon copy of yourself in your partner,
not at all.
because this
Yeah,
is not helping. Two weird people, weird. And if
yeah,
you're listening to this on audio, I'm doing the inverted commas visually. So two weird or supposedly weird people together will not at all have the same path than one weirdo and one more grounded person. Or so I think the what's the word, we add to each other, basically.
yeah, yeah. And he wanted, I mean, he couldn't have done his career without me being always there.
That's exactly.
He worked hours every day, all the way through all our different countries, and I had 3 children, and I it was a limit to what I could do, which wasn't always what I wanted, but I can see that one would not have worked without the other, and so that was just a chapter of life that was as it was. But again, you can then transition, have a different role in each other's lives, which is what's evolving with me. My career is very important, and what I'm doing in the world, and he'd like to take a back seat, but I need to create a bit more money first.
Well, if you want to help Nikki make more money, or if you want to help yourself, you can find Nikki on her website. The references should be somewhere around the description of the podcast. I think it's Nikki Cornfield.com. Very simple. So you go get there, and you will find, I'm sure, a link to her book and to all the amazing offers and services that she offers if you want to know more about her. So thank you very much, Nikki, for coming today. This has been amazing. I love those conversations. And, remain the weirdo. Please, we need more weirdos, grounded weirdos.
Thank you.
And thank you very much to anyone who's listening. And I will see you next month with a new episode. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.